You've found AHO Radio. We're authentic human outliers coming together to help heal the fear of being authentic. To bring back genuine human conversation. No hype, no sensationalism, just honest talk about the critical issues affecting society, affecting humankind. And now, here are the hosts of AHO Radio, John Krotec and Bill Protzmann. A very good day to you, wherever you are in the world right now. It is the end of May in 2021. Things are, at least in the United States, starting to open up a little bit, of going back to work, of having vaccinations, being able to walk around without a mask. All that kind of crazy stuff's happening. And John, it's been a long time since we had a conversation, and I've been looking forward to this, and we've been talking about it, right? I've been so looking forward to this conversation.
Man, it has been a while. Good to see you. You know, lots changed. You've moved. I've moved.
Yeah.
The planet continues to move. That thing floating behind me, and yeah, it's been a while, and it is good to see you, Bill.
Yeah, we need to have this conversation. I mean, there's so much that's flying around in the world right now, and if we can, for listeners, if you're out there listening or watching, John and I want to try to boil this thing down. The thing that sort of triggered us to have this conversation today is what people have been calling deaths of despair, where people just take their own lives because they've reached a place where it just doesn't seem like it can go on any further. And in addition to all the COVID deaths and just the craziness that's happening in India right now and other places where COVID's running wild, we're at a place here in America where the demographic about lifespan has been skewed by one chunk of the population. White guys aged like 55 to 70. There are so many people in that demographic who are taking their own lives that the average life expectancy has declined for the first time since they've been measuring it. And that's just unacceptable. And of course, John and I are here because we want to know why and what we can do about that. And so I'll just throw a couple of words out there that are probably the big words right now: fear and greed. And how do we deal with that? You know, how do we deal with that?
Well, two big words, and it's a shame that that the life expectancy's gone down. It's a shame that people are offing themselves at astronomical rates these days. There is a lot going on, and I personally believe there's a lot of different reasons. And of course, they're probably just opinions, but the reality is the entire world has been traumatized by this pandemic. There's no doubt. People have been isolated. Businesses have shuttered, businesses that have been around for decades. People have lost their livelihoods. There's confusion and there's anger and there's hostility at these very high levels. Governments around the world, let's don't, sugarcoat it, are taking away individual rights.
Yeah, it's creating resentment around that.
There's a serious lack of trust with each other as in different societies and with governments. And there's an ideological battle. You and I've talked about this. Yeah. There's this collectivism thing working against this individualism, and it's creating, cancel culture. Cancel culture? We're going to cancel other people for their beliefs?
Yeah.
Really?
For ancestral history that's important, that's part of who we are, right?
And narratives, look, man, I'm white, right? Yeah. Narratives like, because I'm white, because I'm an American, I'm a racist. I reject that. It makes me want to gag and throw up. I am not a racist. We're trying to jam that down my throat. It's not true. And the companies and the leaders that have bought into that narrative, we really know what's at the bottom of it all: control and power and greed, have bought into this. Some of these companies that are waking up are doing the world and their brands a disservice.
Yeah,
come on, man.
I see our lack of leadership, at the public level, not at the private level so much, but the public level. I see our lack of leadership has really left guys like us out in the cold. I used to joke about, like, white guys, we got nothing, right? And it's even become more now. Straight white guys, we got nothing. If you go out, if for some reason a white guy becomes homeless, he has no chance of getting shelter that night, because the programs are all for people who are not, straight white guys who need a home. They're all for disadvantaged people, mentally ill people, and whatever, and for women, and that's fine. We need to cover all those bases. But it's about time that we stopped looking at ourselves as such divided units and looked at ourselves as a unity. We're all in this together. We all experience trauma. Everybody experiences trauma. That's how we grow. And what can we do now that that awareness has been heightened? Do we continue to feed the beast of fear and greed? Or do we say at some point, no, wait, this is not the conflict we want. This is not the conversation we want. We want to have a conversation that unifies rather than further divides us, because we can't get there on our own. I mean, individual rights are fine, but they operate within the spectrum of everyone. And if I'm doing something that harms you, John, man, I'm wrong. Whatever it is, if I'm harming you, I'm wrong. Just right out of the gate. That's my personal ethos. And no one should be in a place where they're either forced to be harmed or forced to accept harm for a greater good of some kind. That's just wrong. That's trauma. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, you back up here a second. You said it a second ago, leadership. So, right now we seem to be living in a world where leadership and certain businesses are creating this fear.
Yeah, they're fueling the fire, right?
They're fueling these narratives, which are literally bleeding people's souls.
Yeah.
And we can talk about what the soul is, but people's spirits. And sadly, innately, because we're intuitive creatures, humans, and we feel it. People feel it.
Yeah.
And they're struggling for some kind of direction. And our leaders, and I'm glad you said that, our leaders are not stepping up. These companies are playing the game. They're not stepping up. They're not exercising leadership or social responsibility. If what you just said, if your company or you as a politician are fueling the flames of fear, then you're wrong. You just pointed it out. You are wrong. You need to be taken out of office. I'm not going to say, hung out to dry, but you need to think about a different profession, but you don't need to be leading people. And if you're a company that's feeding into these narratives that are false narratives, you're doing not only your customers a disservice, and people know it. You companies know who you are. And guess what? If that's the bottom line that you feel the sting, I personally believe that what goes around comes around. I don't wish ill will towards anybody in any company. But guess what? I do believe, you talk about ethos, I do believe in karma. And I do believe that the pendulum swings one way one day, but it always swings back the other way.
And you're right. I'm willing to make an allowance for our experiment right now. The world's been through some stuff. And as we put it back together, we're inventing what that looks like. There's no guidance here. This is brand new. This is the Wild West all over again in some ways, But if you're on one side of that situation, dug in and entrenched because you are afraid of something else on the other side, it's important to look at that. Because if you're motivated by fear, you're not working toward the progress that we all need. If you're motivated by fear, you're just, you're no better off than a hairball in the corner. You got to sweep that stuff out and throw up some light so we can see the way forward. And I'm not being critical of any one person on this. I'm just saying that we've all, for a long time, fed the fear machine. Fear sells ads. We all know sex sells, violence sells, and that's what the media gives us because they've got to pay the bills. So they're selling stuff that creates viewers, right? And that's now bled over into social media. And social media also works for the sensational because, kittens, puppies, okay, I get that. But you put up a post that creates controversy, that's going to the top of the algorithm. And not in a way that promotes conversation, in a way that promotes division, that promotes fear. And we don't need more of that, people. We got plenty of that already, right? We need to come together around things and find solutions by actually having conversations like the one we're having, John, right? This is an example of how to do it.
Yeah, well, we talked about moving, and I moved across a few different states, and I'm in a place that's very, very, very rural. It's farmland in the Shenandoah Valley.
Yeah, you changed demographics, like bang, you were in a
big time from the west coast of Florida, and yes, and it's a culture shock. But the first thing that I noticed here is what you just alluded to, this sense of community. I've been here 6 weeks now, and everybody in the neighborhood that we have met would give you the shirt off their backs. I mean, I called the local hardware store 7 miles away, right? Asked them about a few things. When I got there, they had put everything aside that I'd asked about, and it was ready for me. And they remembered my name.
Yeah.
Crazy. I mean, that is just awesome. And
that's
then
community, right? That's
community. But there's an even bigger thing here that I've witnessed that I think is part of a solution. Is everywhere you drive in the countryside, and these towns are very interconnected. There's the interstate is the interstate, but we travel the country roads. This village, this hamlet, this town, everywhere we go, you see church steeples. Now, I'm not saying anything about, I'm not pushing any dogma. I'm not pushing any religion. I'm talking about something even deeper than that.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. This is good.
There's a real spiritual vibe here.
Right.
So let's just say if I was in Iraq, you might see the minarets. There's a spiritual vibe here. And living in Sarasota and coming here, there literally is a palpable change in people's attitudes. And I think it's the spirit. It's this connection to something spiritual. I think some of the fear that people are having is that there's a disconnect. And we've talked about this, Bill, with plant medicines and ayahuasca and the shamans trying to connect traumatized people back to their souls. There is a serious spiritual disconnect at a global level. And we're humans, we're smart, and we feel it. And we're looking for direction. And we're so wanting hope. And we're not getting it from the people who are in positions to give that to us.
From the people we've put there. Like, we've chosen to put people in elected positions that give us hope. Oftentimes, if you're on the board of directors and you choose the CEO, that CEO is there to serve you in some way, right? We've chosen those people, including the CEOs that we won't mention, the companies that we won't mention, that are doing taking sides in this thing instead of taking a unifying position, instead of taking a do no harm position. And it's getting harder and harder to lead there because the fear is so great, And we all know how folks in America vote. It's often because they can't stomach the other candidate, right? They can't tolerate the other candidate, so they choose the one that is in their line. And you know what? I'm not criticizing that. That's a move right there away from fear to something. Maybe you fear it less, right? But it's a move away from fear. But if you're in fear, how can you move forward? And I agree with you. Churches are great. Religion is awesome. Religion means to relink. It relinks us to our spirituality. Whatever your flavor of spirituality is, please do that, because I'm convinced that our need here, our movement at this moment in the world is toward a greater understanding, toward a greater appreciation, toward a greater love and compassion. And those are all spiritual moves. None of those are fear moves,
Yeah, it starts with the individual too, and it all boils down to choices. When we look at solutions, what are the solutions? And granted, it's a complex world we live in now. We have complex technologies that can create whole movements and initiatives overnight with the flick of a button.
Yeah.
And people are glued to these dopamine and cortisol fixes. And I really think that it starts with that individual. What was interesting, Bill, in the 6 weeks, and this because we talked quite a bit, off these communication technologies, but it was almost like I went through a digital detox. Didn't watch the news. I was in places where reception or Wi-Fi wasn't real strong. And what was interesting was my significant other, my wife, and I became reacquainted, but also had an opportunity to really talk to people from Florida all the way up to the Shenandoah Valley. And amazingly and strikingly, blacks and whites and Latins, Asians, we love the local Chinese restaurant here. And we found that people are very, very similar. That's common sense. But we found that the same concerns, they're universal.
Right.
So how do we get back there? We reattach, we start to align ourselves with leaders who have similar core values and don't incite riots. We align ourselves with companies that espouse core values that we can relate to. And people say, what's, and whatever happened to etiquette?
Right.
I know
I keep saying right, but just being polite to somebody is offering something other than fear, right?
And this lack of accountability, you and I have talked about this. We can come on, I can go into a social media platform and I can just denigrate somebody to no end, and then just click it off for a few days.
Yeah, with impunity, right?
And let the fun begin, whether it's true or not. And even if it is true, so what? But the yarns that are being spun and the outright lies, and we said at the outset, don't force a narrative on me that's not true, because you don't know me.
Yeah.
When I was in the service, I would have died for my brothers and sisters of all colors.
Right there.
Don't tell me. I get it. I understand teamwork, and a house divided will fall. I didn't say that. Somebody else with a lot more smarts than me said that, and we've all heard that.
Oh, you can see it in real life, It just
we better tighten up. And if you're in positions where you can make a difference, and in a positive way, and you're not doing it because you're worried about getting canceled, then you need to look in the mirror. Because personally, I'm going to start rejecting these narratives. We're doing it now. This is going to be live. Our good friend, Vietnam veteran, whose dad was an Army general, said the way to fight back is not with fisticuffs and Molotov cocktails. It's with words and ideas.
Yeah.
And reject the things that aren't true.
Yeah. And words are powerful. Confrontational words are necessary when there's a need for confrontation, for contrast. But the kind of words that inspire are much different. And it's a whole different thing to inspire a room full of people to take action than it is to scare them into taking action. And I recognize both, but we need to be on the side of inspiring people now to do the right thing. Because the weight of opinion and all of the stuff that's happening on the other side of fueling the fear and getting people with their pitchforks and torches together, that's not solving the problem here, people. We've been doing that for too many thousands of years. We've got the opportunity to come together in our fear and trauma and whatever it is, and be inspired and motivated to find options that do no harm, that don't hurt people.
Well, you mentioned the fringes, you have, and then it's always left or right, and
right.
And so 1% of the population is the fringe left, and 1% of the population is the fringe right. And then you got 98% of us that lean to the right on some issues and lean to the left on other issues.
Yeah, like me, I'm a libertarian who thinks that universal health care and a living wage is a good idea, right? That's strange, but that's me. So sorry, go ahead.
No, but it's true. But why is it that the 2% keep us? And you know why? Because they're drowning the 98% of the people that are just trying to feed their families.
Yeah, well, the media's in their pocket, because that stuff sells. Conflict sells, and
look at the ratings of some of these people. Some ratings have just plummeted because people are catching on.
Yeah.
And they're saying, I'm not buying that bullshit that guy's trying to feed me.
Yeah.
And it's on both sides. I mean, let's get real here.
Oh, yeah.
But there's
tool,
some talking.
Right?
It's a tool. But I'm all about rejecting false narratives that don't apply to me.
Right.
And if you think they apply to me, well, good for you. But you don't know me. So if you want to think that, believe the lie. Believe a lie.
Let's talk, because one of the things that's really important right now is how you know the difference between truth and fiction, right? And that's a big question. And I can't tell you that there's an easy way to do it. I heard one person say that to research an article about a specific thing takes like 90 hours right now, because you have to just spend that kind of time to find out what's true. What's true, you'll feel it inside. If you feel love and joy about something, that's true for you. You know, if you feel angst and terror and trauma, take a look at that, because there might be good reasons that you feel that. And that could be true for you too. Like, so you can't just say anything that scares me is false. The stuff that scares you might be scaring you straight, right? It might be scaring you toward a truth that you haven't yet discovered. And
Well,
that's an important distinction.
Yeah, it is. It's a good point. You know, I think there's a book out there called The Five Agreements. Started out as the Four Agreements, and then the Fifth Agreement. It talks about the Toltecs and, 45 or 5,000-year-old culture. And it talks about these Naguals. The Naguals were the wise people, the spiritual leaders, the shamans. And to them, what they believed is that everybody lies, because it's based upon personal perception, based upon the way they were raised. And,
so
our
interesting.
Parents,
So our ancestry determines our view, our worldview.
Absolutely, it can. So let's just say you're raised in Mexico and you're taught that red is blue, and I'm raised in Canada and I'm taught that red is green. We could come to fisticuffs because we both believe their agreements. We agreed to that. Oh, that is blue. Oh, that is red.
Right, I see.
And so we're raised in these societies where we're believing things that are based upon other people's words, other people's opinions.
Sure.
But inside you're feeling, holy cow, I think that's red and they're telling me it's blue.
Emperor's New Clothes, man, right?
Yeah. Well, there's so many, there's a lot of books out there too. Ayn Rand writes a lot of stuff like this, the battle between, group thought and things like that. But the Naguals believe that truth is truth and doesn't need to be discussed.
Right. It's empirical.
It's empirical. It doesn't need to be discussed. And if you're discussing different, I think you had an example one time, Bill, about blind people feeling a different part of an elephant.
Oh yeah.
One person, the tusk and the trunk, and everybody feels a different part of the elephant. And then they disagree about what an elephant is. But the absolute truth is that they're all correct.
Yeah, it's an elephant.
It's based upon their perception and what part of the elephant they were hanging on to.
So how do I, as a blind guy feeling the elephant, or as somebody perceiving the wrong color, how do I then work with you, John, if you're feeling a different part of the element? How do we interact? That's really the key right now, right?
Engage in tolerance. Tolerance these days has just gone out the window, and tolerance is a lack of respect for others. But the reality is it's a lack of self-respect.
Right.
If you respect yourself, you will respect others. If you disrespect yourself, if you don't respect yourself, you're never going to respect others. If you have no self-love, you're not going to love anybody. Yeah. And I'm not talking about the creepy kind of love. I'm talking about the real heartfelt love.
Yeah. So the self-compassion, self-acceptance, humility, forgiveness, that kind of stuff.
So you ask the question. The question is go with intuition. It's one of the greatest gifts that we've ever been gifted as a human being. Is the intuitive nature of the human mind and the ability to choose the direction they go. I can't tell you, man.
I'd add to that, because if I'm hanging on the tail of the elephant, you're hanging on the trunk. We've got two different perceptions that are both right. And I know, that the elephant tail is the elephant, right? And that the elephant trunk is the elephant. So to put all that together, I'm going to have to tolerate your viewpoint.
It takes work.
Right? It takes work. Even though it's different than mine, I got to tolerate yours, because somehow or another we know that we're connected to this elephant.
So let's just say, I don't want to put any negative karma out there, but let's just say 10 people are shipwrecked on an island. Okay. 2 of every color, right? And what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah. I mean, who knows? We hope for the best, right?
Would they survive if they pulled together more, or would they have a greater challenge if they fought and battled each other?
Well,
I mean, it's rhetorical. I mean, it's a 10-year-old could answer
Lord of
that.
the Flies, right? I mean,
Yeah, and that's all power and fear too.
yeah,
And we need to start finding ways, and starts with the individual. Choose to engage those with different belief systems.
yeah, intentionally, on purpose. Like I'm standing back there grabbing on the tail, say, John, dude, it don't feel to me like what it feels like to you. Tell me about your experience.
Come here, Bill, and hang on to the trunk. Show me
Right,
the tail. Show me what you're talking about.
right.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Smells like an elephant.
Yeah,
Doesn't feel like one, but it smells like one. Because we're blind, we can't. We still have the sense of smell.
right.
But that's and to start. You know, patronize companies that have similar values, that aren't
Yes.
feeding into the pain, and which is really feeding the fears, feeding into the pain of others, the isolation. And then elect officials that don't play the game.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, and I'll
I've heard it
call
called
them out.
the conflict machine is
Well, the
the word I've heard
squad,
for this. Yeah.
the squad.
The squad, right?
Come on,
Yeah.
AOC and a few others. I hear you,
Don't
Lima
feed the
Charlie,
fear, people. Leaders, don't feed
loud
the
and
fear.
clear. But come on, AOC, you're not
Yeah.
that stupid.
Yeah.
You know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Come
And
on, you're an elected.
pandering for votes and being reelected is not the point right now. Hello.
And I won't. We can name a bunch of them, but if you're an elected official in a place where the vote, now we're worried about how the votes are taken, right?
Yeah.
But if you're in a place that you're voted into office, which usually means the people of that country or that jurisdiction want you to lead them, and all of a sudden you start doing something that's anti-community, anti-democratic, anti-good of the constituency, you need to just resign.
Yeah. It's
Let
not
somebody else
responsible.
lead.
And fomenting fear right now, especially if you're elected, is not a responsible place. And you know what? As a follower, as someone who has to submit to the majority, I have strong feelings about the majority. The majority has never been innovative. They've just been more than me. And I have strong feelings about that I have to swallow and sort of go along with. But you know what? The moment that I hear an elected official play to fear is a red flag for me. Because I don't need more fear, thank you very much. And I don't care whether that means getting elected or not. And you know how they all play it, like the fear of missing out and the scarcity thing and all of that stuff we learn about in marketing school, right? All of that stuff. The moment a politician does that, the moment an elected leader does that, the moment a corporate leader does that, if we don't do this, our shares are going to lose value, right? The moment that I hear that kind of fear talk, my antenna go up, because that's a red flag for me.
Yeah, and it need be. The status quo is dead, listeners, and thank you for listening. I hope you lasted this long with Bill and me, but the status quo is dead.
Yeah.
We need innovative leaders. We need heart-centered leaders. We need compassionate, community-minded leaders. We need companies with real core values, not companies and that are spinning narratives that are not true. We don't need media outlets lying to their listeners for ratings.
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, anyhow,
we need people who are not afraid to be who they are, culturally who they are, and embrace other cultures for who they are. Those are characteristics of a leader that I want to see. Someone
absolutely.
Who is proud of their culture, who is confident in themselves and their culture, and who embraces other cultures the same way. That's the leadership I want to see.
Right. So if you're in a position to make a to influence in a positive way, and you're not doing it, step aside and let those innovative.
Yeah, either grow a pair or step aside. And by the way, I mean that in the metaphorical sense, because I have two kids who are trans kids, and so you could be a strong woman just as easily you could be a weak man, right?
Well, even the younger generation, and this is another thing I know we're getting towards the end of the 30 minutes, but this is another thing too. We don't owe anybody anything, right?
Yeah, what do you mean?
We just don't. Well, people think that they're owed something.
Oh, like
right?
The entitlement mentality.
Yeah, we don't owe anybody anything. Yeah. But a compassionate, community-minded leader understands that sustainability in any type of society is what we impart to the younger generation. We got some really bright kids coming along in technological skills. They blow us away, but they lack in social skills. A lot of them do. And, and we were raised on social skills, the golden rule and all this. We need, as leaders that care about the places we live, we need to embrace the younger generations and show them that there's a better way than falling for some false narrative because you think that that's the way it's going to be better somehow. Listen, it's not easy for anybody. And you were talking about, I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth.
Yeah, me neither.
I haven't been given anything. I made the call to the suicide hotline. I did all of these things. It hasn't been easy. And if you think having white skin is easy,
I can tell you, check out the guys who've been taking their own lives.
It's not. And now, that's a whole other thing too. But nothing is easy, and everything is easy. It's your choice.
So what do you
think? Still
hope. Do we have enough hope? I mean, I'm asking you, John, but I'm also asking listeners. Do we have enough hope? I believe we do.
I believe we do too. Yes, there's an abundance of hope. It's just not, it's that the tank's on, it's a quarter full right now.
Right.
But imagine
if tough,
Imagine if you're the CEO of Delta. I mean, if you're the CEO of some airline company, imagine the real difference you could make if you started embracing narratives that help the entire population of flyers and not just one segment.
Brother, that's the question right there. Who's going to lead that way? Instead of fighting down here, who's going to rise above it and say, nope, it's about love. Let's lead with love. Which, just to bring it up, Southwest Airlines, right? Their logo for a long time was a heart. And they love to fly. They did that whole thing. Herb Keller, what an amazing guy. I think I got his name right. He built that company on love, and it's the biggest little regional airline in the United States.
Yes. I mean, that's awesome, man. I would love companies like Bank of America to lead with love.
Yep.
Let's name them.
Yep.
I would love to have Delta lead with love.
Apple, Google, Amazon.
Lead with love. Not with hate.
Maybe you don't get the dividends that you got last year or whatever. Maybe you don't make the kind of money you made. I mean, who needs to make multi-billions more? But by acknowledging the love dividend and putting yourself in a place to promote that, now that's something that'll stop the deaths of despair.
And if those companies did that, love would start selling.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk sneezes and cryptocurrency goes wild, right? So if somebody at that level were to say love once in a while and actually put policies in place to do it, think how things could change, man. Think of all this hope that's bottled up could just be unleashed into that kind of opportunity.
So I go back to Imagine by John Lennon.
There you go. Yeah.
And, just listen to the lyrics, some of the most powerful lyrics of any song ever.
I know. People say it's woo-woo, but it's truth.
It's truth. We're not judging John Lennon. We're not judging any of that. We're listening to lyrics.
Yeah.
And those lyrics inspire hope. And that song still is listened to around the world. Sure. If you're a CEO somewhere and you're spinning yarns and supporting narratives that aren't true for the majority or for your customers, you need to just tune in to Imagine on the way to your board meeting.
Yeah.
And if you're if you're a squad member, AOC and the others, I don't even know who they all are, listen to Imagine.
Yeah. Both sides of the House, man. Do they still start House of Representatives and Senate with a prayer?
I don't think so. I think they dissed it.
Can't imagine
huge mistake
responsible for that. But yeah, open to spirituality is what we're talking about here. Stay open to the practical spirituality that's already out there. That's a part of who we are. It's we're hardwired to be nice to each other. We have to work to hurt each other.
Absolutely. You remember the movie Pretty Woman?
Oh yeah.
With Richard Gere, and who was the female? Who was the lady?
All I can think of is Erin Brockovich, but it'll come to me. Anyway, yes.
Yeah. She was an attractive woman, and she down on her luck, and Richard Gere comes into her life, and you have to see the movie, but she goes around to these stores and she's dressed like she's off the street, and nobody pays her any mind, any bit of attention. And Richard Gere finds out about it, takes her out shopping, Beverly Hills, these top-notch stores. And so he takes her to this place, and they treat her like gold because they knew Richard Gere, and they dress her up to the hilt. And she gets all dressed up to the hilt, and she goes back to one of those stores, and she's wearing all this stuff. She's got like 30 grand worth of things. And she goes up to the people that were making fun of her. And she says, "Do you remember me?" And none of them did. And she holds up her bags, and she's wearing like top-notch clothing, like thousands of dollars worth of sales. And she goes, "Huge mistake. Huge, huge, huge mistake." And she turns around and exits the store.
Yep.
And what I'm getting at, it's a huge mistake to diss your constituents or to diss your customers.
Yeah, it won't work.
It won't work. So anyhow, I love you, Bill. Good to see you, man.
Let's wrap this.
We'll get back into these, and all I can say is instill hope if you're a leader or a CEO that can actually make a difference. And if you're a person down on your luck, this universe has amazing potential.
It does for all of us, and in
Tap
ways
into
that,
it.
In ways we need to discover. Let's be honest about it. Let's find those new ways. Let's go with what's available, and it's incredible. It's incredible. We just dial it up, right? Love you, brother.
Love you, brother. AHO, and yeah, we'll be talking to you again soon. And thank you for listening, AHO. We appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of AHO Radio. Information we mentioned is probably in the show notes, but if we missed anything, please let us know and we'll get it added for you. Subscribe to the AHO Radio channel on YouTube to stay connected, and, as always, we wish you health, success, and significance. AHO. AHO.
AHO.